Hello, I'm Dougie, I'm 36 years old and I'm a boxing MC from Glasgow. 12 months ago I had an FUE hair transplant procedure at the private clinic in Birmingham with Dr Mouzakis. So what made me choose the private clinic? Well, actually it wasn't an easy choice when I made the decision to get a hair transplant. Obviously I did an awful lot of research and I looked into all different clinics both in the UK and abroad. Finally though, I settled and booked I think 4 different consultations with 4 different clinics, and the private clinic was definitely my favourite. I think the most important thing was when I had the consultation with Dr Mouzakis. He was just such a kind of caring guy. I've mentioned this before on previous video diaries, but I remember at one point I asked him a question regarding price, and he just looked me dead in my eye and said, you know, like, please speak to the office about money. As far as I'm concerned, you're a patient and not a client. And both my wife and who was with me, you know, my wife and I both decided there and then that he was a surgeon we wanted doing the procedure, and the whole staff and the whole team at the private clinic in Birmingham, they just made me feel so comfortable, and the actual clinic itself was so immaculately clean, and I just get such a good feeling from the place, from the team, and most importantly from the surgeon, Dr Mouzakis. So once I'd done that, I wasn't going to go anywhere else. So what made me decide to have an FUE hair transplant? Well, as a boxing MC, I'm frequently presenting obviously fight sport events around the world. Many of these are televised and always under very bright lights. In this kind of social media age as well, as soon as a fight show passes, there are literally thousands of photographs appear online, and I was becoming more and more conscious of the fact that under studio lights, and you know, if I was sweating at all or if my head was tipped forward, I was just becoming more and more aware of my receding hairline, and I was beginning to get quite self-conscious about it. So that was when I first kind of made the decision to look into it. At that point I didn't know about cost or clinics and different choices at home and abroad and things like that, but certainly it was as a result of photos and TV work that I became very aware of my own hairline and that I wasn't happy with it. When did I first notice my receding hairline? Probably around about my late 20s, I would guess, 29, maybe 30, something like that. It started off slow, and then I think it started receding a lot quicker, you know, after that. It made me feel quite self-conscious. Obviously, you know, doing events, fight sport events as a boxing MC, there's a lot of photographs and sometimes TV work, and you know, it's only when you see yourself in a photograph or maybe on holiday and you're swimming, you know, and then you look at a holiday photograph and you actually can't quite believe how far back your hairline has receded. When you get ready in the morning, you know, you go through a phase whereby you can still comb your hair in a particular fashion that kind of, you know, covers a multitude of sins, but then there comes a point where actually you can't hide it anymore, and that's when, you know, we do what I did, and you just end up having a number 1 all over. Even when I got like in a buzz cut, like a military haircut, I was still conscious of my receding hairline, so it kind of made me a little bit self-conscious about that, and that was when I first started looking into the possibility of getting a hair transplant. What research did I do before getting together with a private clinic? Well, loads actually, and if anything it became you know, a bit of an obsession. You know, I remember lying awake in bed at night, you know, reading forums, the Bald Truth and all the other kind of online forums where people discuss different clinics and different procedures, different doctors, different countries. I mean, I think I read just about every written word on the procedure before settling with the private clinic. I did also consult with other doctors, other clinics. I'm just so glad actually that I got in touch with the private clinic, and I travelled from Glasgow down to Birmingham to meet with Dr Mouzakis, and I'm just delighted that I did. I know I've made the right decision. Since having done that, actually, friends of mine have had hair transplants, some here in Scotland and some have gone abroad to Turkey, and I hope they're not watching this because they might be offended, but I can just see that mine is better, you know, like some of them it's quite patchy, or you know, it's the reason I know mine is of such a high quality, and I put that down to the skill level of Dr Mouzakis actually. But even I volunteer to people that have had a hair transplant. If ever it comes up in conversation, I don't hide away from it. You know, I'm quite open about having done it. obviously doing these video diaries is testament to that. But even when I tell people I've had a hair transplant, they thoroughly examine my hair and they really look in at my hairline, and they just they think I'm kidding on, they think I'm joking with them, and I'm not. You know, I have had a hair transplant. But when you see other people, particularly I think people who have gone abroad to do it, I think it's just much more obvious. They end up with a less natural looking hairline, and sometimes the density isn't quite smooth all the way through. I think what Dr Mouzakis really specialises in is the actual shape of your hairline. I really think that he doesn't try and reach for the moon. You know, he gives you a hairline which is natural looking. He doesn't, you know, bring your hairline so far forward that it's false. And also he does a really nice job, in my opinion, of matching the density from the front of your hairline right the way through to the back. You know, my main kind of problem areas were the temples on both sides, and also a bit of density in the centre. And Dr Mouzakis was able to fill in and give me a nice hairline that I'm really happy with. And like I say, when I tell people I've done it, they actually can't believe that my hairline isn't 100% natural. So I'm certain he's done a good job, and I'm certainly delighted with it anyway. How did I feel on the day of the procedure? Well, I suppose like anyone else, I was quite nervous. I was also excited. You know, by this point I'd just done so much online research that I couldn't wait to see my finished result, you know. So I travelled down to Birmingham the night before. I was in the private clinic first thing in the morning. By this point I really did have the butterflies and stuff, and I'm a little bit particularly nervous when it comes to any kind of injections and needles and things like that. So when I knew I was about to get the first bout of anaesthetic, I thought, oh, I'm not looking forward to this now. But actually that was the thing I was most concerned about, and fortunately it's really not that bad. And again, having read online other people's accounts of having done a hair transplant, I expected it to be so much worse. In fact, it stings a little bit the first couple of injections you get, but by the time they move on from that, you know, your head's already numb. So it was a lot easier to deal with than I expected. Actually, it was not bad at all. But going back to how I felt on it, I would just say that typical blend of nervousness and excitement would be how I felt in the run-up to the procedure. So how do I feel the procedure went? I suppose kind of textbook really. I was in first thing in the morning. Dr Mouzakis and his team were already there, you know, ready for me to start. We met, he was very thorough in explaining exactly what his intention was, and the timescales that he anticipated each aspect of the procedure to take, and he was more or less spot on. I think the extraction phase took maybe a little bit, maybe about half an hour longer than he anticipated, just because I had quite thick, stubborn hair. You know, I've got quite curly hair actually. So I think the extraction maybe took about half an hour longer than he'd anticipated, but we just worked on. He got it done. His team in the surgery were fabulous. They were separating all the follicles into singles, doubles, trebles, and even quadruples actually. And then we broke for lunch, and then came back to it after having a bite to eat, and we're on to the implant stage then, and that was remarkably quick actually. So the procedure for me was more or less pain-free, and yeah, textbook. For a lot of it I slept actually, so I would recommend anyone to do it that's thinking about it. What reaction did I get from friends, family, colleagues, that kind of thing? Well, I told everyone that I bored everyone actually for months in advance that I was thinking about doing it. So for the people closest to me, I suspect they were probably just relieved when I did in fact actually go through with it. Obviously everyone, all my closest friends and family were excited to see the result straight after it. But do you know the thing is, once the initial kind of scabbing, shedding phase passes by, people don't even mention it anymore. I can't believe now that I've actually got long hair that I can style different ways. You know, at the moment I'm kind of going for this undercut thing, which you know, my barber kind of talked me into, and I like it anyway. But for years I just had a #1 all over, because you know, I was sick of the fact that my hairline was receding so much, so I just went for #1 all over. So having the freedom now to kind of style my hair different ways and try things out, you know, I'm so pleased with the results of my hair transplant. I can't really put into words how life-changing it is. Previously I used to look in the mirror and the only thing I saw was my hairline. and I wasn't happy with it. So every time you passed a mirror or caught a glimpse of yourself, it was a disappointment, you know, and that's gone now. So it's just fantastic. And I can honestly say to anyone that's thinking about doing it, like, I actually would say I spent too long thinking about it. You know, I touched on this earlier, but I read all of the forums. You know, I looked at Trustpilot reviews, and you know, I just researched it so thoroughly, all the different options for getting a different hair transplant, the different procedures, different clinics, different doctors, and I spent so long thinking about it. I cannot recommend the private clinic enough. They've been wonderful to deal with. They did a fantastic job, and I'm so happy with the results.